Hello, I am back with yet another interview as usual, but I'm visited by one of the legends in the industry, Brian Shea, one of Game Informer's executive editors and a host of All Things Nintendo, a weekly podcast focused on Nintendo news and games. If you're not familiar with him, what's up, Brian? How are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself if people don't know who you are.
Sure. So thank you so much for having me
Yes,
on.
thank you.
We connected a few weeks ago,
Yeah,
and it was great, just kind of like breaking the ice. And now
absolutely.
it's cool to record something together.
Right on.
So I started writing about video games about 18 years ago, and prior to that, I was actually just kind of helping to run a music website with a friend just when I had spare time in college, and that just kind of converted me into like enjoying writing because I never liked it growing up. But I realized that like, oh, if I write about topics that I love, I actually love writing. And so I started writing about music, and then I really liked like Guitar Hero and Rock Band. Like I played Guitar Hero competitively in college, so I started writing about those as well. But the first game review I ever wrote, and like the first game that really motivated me to be like, oh, I should write a video game review instead of an album review, was Fallout 3, which I got on clearance at a closing location of Circuit City in my college town.
Oh man.
So dating myself there because that chain has been
Circuit City
out of
was awesome.
business.
I miss Circuit City. I was around, so
Yeah, it was nice to have a competitor to Best Buy
totally.
for a while there. But yeah, so I've been writing about video games ever since Fallout 3 came out, and I played it and loved it so much I wanted to write a review of it, and then started writing about Guitar Hero and Rock Band for another website. Then I joined somebody else's like kind of small video game blog. Then in 2010, I co-founded my own video game website, which I helped run for 4 years. And then I started doing like freelance for like OXM, rest in peace, Joystick, rest in peace. But like, also some of the ones that are still around, like Kotaku and IGN. And then, yeah, in 2014, I made it to my first E3 and met the Game Informer guys. And at the time, Andy McNamara was the editor in chief, who was the editor in chief, I think, for like 28 years. So that was not anything new at that point. But I met him and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like that's the editor in chief of Game Informer. And he turned and looked at me in the middle of the conversation. And he's like, Brian Shea, you wrote that article on Kotaku, right? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I love that article. And I was like, oh, that's
Yeah,
cool.
you told me that story originally when we talked, and like yeah, that feeling must have just been like, wow, you know my name. That is insane.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah,
So, especially since, I grew up reading video game magazines, like the big three for me were always like Nintendo Power, Game Pro, and Game Informer. And I know like EGM was also amazing at that time. And I never really had like a loyalty to EGM, but I would like, check it out at my school library all the time. But like Game Informer was the one that like I had like subscription to, and Nintendo Power I'd like go out of my way to try to find issues of Nintendo Power, because as you mentioned in the intro, I host a Nintendo podcast, so
yeah.
obviously I've been a Nintendo fan for
I
many
mean, yeah,
decades at
that's
this
where you would
point.
say your root starts. I mean, like that's kind of what your niche, your niche has been, right? Like you just really focused
Yeah,
on.
well, I mean, so it's funny because I didn't own a video game console for the first several years of being a gamer. It's just I would go to my aunt and uncle's houses and they would have Nintendos and like NESs, and I would play on at one aunt's house. It was like Mario and Duck Hunt, that one single cartridge, and Tetris. And then on the other aunt and uncle's, it was like the original Legend of Zelda, Bubble Bobble, Goal 2, which was a soccer game, and a few other games. Like there was like the Batman NES game and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah.
So like I loved gaming through that, but I never had one, and I never had a console. And every once in a while, my dad's best friend would stay over at our house, and he would bring his NES, and that was like a huge treat. So getting a SNES under the Christmas tree one year
Oh
was
man,
with
it
Super Mario
changed your
World.
life, right? Like that's amazing.
Absolutely. And then it's funny because I wasn't a Nintendo kid for a little bit because we were moving, and this was second grade, and my parents sold their house way faster than we expected, and the house we were moving into wasn't ready for another several months. So we had to move in with my grandparents. And when we got there, they realized that they packed my SNES way in the back corner, and they're like, "We can't get to it."
Oh no.
So not only had they moved me away from all my friends, they also took away my SNES like inadvertently.
Yeah.
So they took me to one of the wholesale stores, like it was BJ's
Okay.
Wholesale. If
Yeah.
you're not familiar with that, it's like Costco or
Yeah.
Sam's Club. And they got me a Sega Genesis, and that kickstarted my love of Sonic, which is like another one of my like probably
Mhm.
top three
For
franchises that
some reason,
I've
when I
loved.
think of you, I do think of Sonic. Like I don't know, when I see your face, I think of Sonic simultaneously. So that's funny.
Well, I mean, I've probably done more coverage of the Sonic franchise than anybody else in like mainstream games media, just
Yeah.
because like I have spent like probably 10 to 15 hours with Takashi Iizuka, who's the head of Sonic team.
Mhm.
And he's, been there since Sonic 2. So, being able to have that opportunity is amazing to me as somebody who was obsessed with Sonic. Like I there are all these moments of like kind of pinch me moments, and like having that access to people like Takashi Iizuka, or being able to go to Japan. And my other obsessions as a kid were like Donkey Kong Country and Super Mario, any Super Mario game. I started with the original Super Mario Brothers, but my real obsession was like Super Mario World, like when I got that
Oh yeah.
SNES. But
Sick.
like also like Pokemon was a huge one for me growing up. So like I've been to Game Freak, and I've like spent two
Sick.
full days interviewing like Junichi Masuda. I've drank Japanese whiskey with Junichi Masuda.
Nice.
I've interviewed Shigeru Miyamoto. I've met him a few times, and Koji Kondo and Takashi Iizuka I already mentioned. But like I've had Kevin Bayless, the guy who created Diddy Kong, on my
So
podcast.
cool.
So
Yeah.
it's like it's just been kind of like this long
So
series of pinch me moments.
right, it's kind of like found you. I mean, I've said the Japanese. I mean, of course you grew up with with Mario and stuff, but it's kind of found you, I would say. Also, shout out to Game Freak, Beast of Reincarnation. Have you played?
I started it. I
Okay.
haven't gotten deep enough in any kind of
I
evaluation.
really like. I think I'm a little hotter on it than most people. But I'm really liking it. So shout out to Game Freak, of course, Pokemon, but
Yeah. Oh, that old thing.
yeah, that all. Beast Reincarnation is the new thing. That's what all the kids are playing. Well, cool, Brian. I've brought you. Thank you so much for telling us about yourself. You've told me that before, and I'm sure you give that spill all the time. So you really have it down pat. It's very impressive.
I mean, took a circuitous route, but and I didn't mention that. In 2015, got hired on at Game Informer. Dan Reichert, who now is one of the owners of Giant Bomb,
Nice.
he was at Game Informer at the time, and I was a pretty good friend with him. And then he actually left right after that E3 2014, so it created a job opening. And I think there's a little bit of serendipity there that like I had just met the Game Informer guys, and I guess my name was like top of mind. And this was actually the fourth time I applied to work at Game Informer, and this was the first time I got an interview. So I think I made the most of it. And then the second interview, they actually were like, "Oh, well, we usually fly people in for the second interview into Minnesota, but we've all met you, so we don't need to do that. We can just do it over like Skype or whatever was
Yeah,
like the video call thing back in 2014." Got hired, entry level position, and yeah, just
it's been history
have
ever
worked
since.
my way up the ranks ever since.
Nice, dude. I love it. Yeah, I love that. I mean, you kind of boots on the ground. Honest journalism. I love it. But Brian, I've brought
Thanks.
you here because I have some questions, some investigative work that I need to talk to you about. Okay.
Uh
Yeah. No. Right. No. Not about you. Nothing personal, of course. But I don't know. You are not active on Twitter, right? You're very active
oh.
on right, the worst place in the world. I don't know why I'm there either. But so I have this question. I'm going to read it. It's like the boring journalism question. Through your time in the industry, you've been around for a long time, as you previously stated. How do you think negativity has changed and grown? Right, like it's a very big question.
Yeah.
Very blanket statement, and like even possibly with critiquing and media journalism. But let me preface this question. I don't know if you've seen the negativity with Wolverine or even heard of it through the through the grapevine. I mean, it's nonsensical, of course. It's Twitter, and I think a lot of it, Twitter's not real life. But I do think there's a bit of a you have to, with Insomniac, with all the leaks, I mean, they've been beaten down. It sucks, right? Like they create incredible games. I can't wait to play Wolverine. I love Spider-Man
Mhm.
1. But I mean, what do you think is going on? Of course, there, these social media outlets are a bit of a vacuum, a bit, and people love, it's engagement farming. But I think there's something there. So I'm just curious. Like, you've been around and you've seen things change and grow. What the hell is going on, Brian? What's up with Wolverine?
I think that there's a few different angles that I've noticed. One is people comparing it to the Spider-Man games, and I've seen people saying like, "Oh, well, like the best part of the Spider-Man games is the traversal. Wolverine's not going to have that traversal, so therefore it's going to be removing the best part of that." And I understand that concern, but I also think the combat looks a lot better in Wolverine, and I love those Spider-Man games. I think that all three of them, Spider-Man 1, Miles Morales, and Spider-Man 2, are all fantastic games. I know people are kind of down on 2. I love it. I'm also, a complete sicko for Marvel stuff and DC when it's good.
Yeah.
But I have the utmost faith in Insomniac. I think that Wolverine looks fantastic. But I understand the concerns of like, okay, well, the number one reason I play Spider-Man by Insomniac is because the web swinging feels so good. Obviously, Wolverine's not going to be web swinging around the environment, but what I have to say is I have faith that Insomniac will figure out a way to still make it feel really good. So that's how I'm avoiding that negativity that you're seeing from that particular angle, right? Is like the combat looks like it's going to have added layers. I think that Insomniac has not given me reason not to trust them. I have not played the game, so I can't tell you one way or another if it is going to feel great. All I can tell you is that I bought a PS5 Pro this week because I'm super excited for Wolverine. I'm super excited for GTA 6 when that comes out. Like a PS5 Pro feels like, as somebody who loves video games as much as I do, that's like a must. So all that to say is I have a lot of faith in Insomniac figuring out how to make that feel good. And but I understand the anxiety from that angle. The other stuff that I'm seeing is like, oh, well, Spider-Man 2 sucked. And I think that what that feels like is one of my biggest complaints about social media is the removal of nuance, where there's no gray area. Like everything's either the greatest thing ever or the worst thing ever. You can't say, oh, that game was just okay.
Yeah.
Because people say, what are you talking about? That game sucked. Or what are you talking about? That game's amazing. Like, it's really tough to have a nuanced take on social media because people take this like you're either with us or against us mentality. And that's, largely a reason why I've stopped posting a lot of stuff on social media. Like I've my Blue Sky over the past 2 weeks has transitioned purely to a promotional thing where I just share like, hey, here's a new episode of my podcast. Hey, here's an article I wrote, because I'm just tired. I'm tired of like hot take culture. I'm tired of like, oh, you don't agree. You're not 100% aligned with me. Therefore, you're the enemy or you're the opponent, or you have a take that I just want to, I want to get into your mentions and ruin your day for a little bit. Like, I don't know. It's just exhausting to me. And I think that we're getting some of that. Like you said, like a lot of it is engagement bait. A lot of it is like, we have to say something. And if we don't have a take, we're not relevant anymore. And I'm really not a fan of how social media has pushed that. Now, there is one other negative angle that I do think is 100% valid, but I think that the anger is misdirected. And that is PlayStation removing the physical media, that announcement. And people are saying, oh, well, I'm not going to buy Wolverine because of that. And I get that. Like, it's being published by PlayStation. Totally understand that. But I'm kind of the mind of, I want to support the developers.
Totally. Yeah.
Because like I look at like all the stuff. Take Microsoft, for example, right now. Microsoft is going through it, I think, is the the nicest way I can say that.
It's a very kind word to say. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
growing pains.
They're stepping on a lot of rakes right now, and it's not a company that I'm extremely enthusiastic about supporting at the moment.
It's hard to, for sure.
But I still understand from a like developer perspective that like these are like the people who are the rank and file developers, the employees, the people working at these studios are largely not to blame for those decisions. It's the executives in the mothership
Yeah.
that are making these decisions, and even sometimes above the heads of the Xbox executives, and it goes up to like the Microsoft executives who are making those decisions. So it's like when Gears of War E-Day comes out and I'm looking at that game and I'm like, man, like I don't want to support like this particular aspect of Xbox. But it also, I don't know, it's just like a weird thing where you have to like kind of reconcile with the fact that like you can be excited or be enthusiastic about a game that is being made by human beings that are underneath the umbrella of these companies that are making these terrible decisions. And everybody has to kind of make their own decision in that regard. And I think that negativity towards Wolverine because of that decision, I think, is misguided. I think deciding not to buy it because of that is a perfectly valid thing, because again, that is being published by PlayStation. And if you want to make a statement like, you know, complaint plus money from a corporation's perspective still equals money, right?
Totally.
Complaint
Yeah.
plus
Vote
not
with your
spending
wallet.
money.
Right. Vote with your
Yeah,
wallet is
exactly.
definitely the best. I don't know. Not that I'm ever anti-boycott. I talk to my girlfriend a lot about this, and I think sometimes people boycott, and it's like it just doesn't work. But I do think voting with your wallet, it's the best way, right? Like it shows these big companies like Microsoft and PlayStation. Like it sucks too, because I would, not that I was excited people were canceling their PS Plus, but I was like, maybe it'll show. Like maybe it'll really show. I canceled mine. And I love PlayStation. I play mostly on PC, but I mean, I have my PS5 Pro. I also bought it for Wolverine and GTA and Ghost of Yotei, right? But yeah, like it didn't make an indent at all. But there's so many strings to pull on what you're saying, Brian, and I feel, I mean, just to like go back to like the initial negativity of Wolverine, it is engagement farming, but it's like it blows my mind because you see the demo of this game and you're like, I mean, it looks incredible, right? And it's not even that I'm like glazing Marvel or Wolverine, like I'm really not. It's just like I think you bring up a great point, and even with Rockstar, it's like Insomniac has never given us a reason not to trust them. So what is this hate of like, the characterization of Wolverine? It's like you haven't played it. I know Game Informer got impressions, and like, I don't know. I'm like, if this like this just didn't exist 10 years ago, and I talked to I like to talk to different journalists about it because you have had your finger on the pulse of this, and it's just like it's starting to get weird, and I don't know what people are gonna do about it. Like, will it change? Like, it's starting to get really unfun, right? Like, I love games, but and it's funny you brought up the physical thing. I wanted to talk to you about the your piece over the PS5 and Xbox Series X generation has been erased to the bottom. It's a wonderful article. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but I mean, where do you think this negativity continues and just gets worse on different platforms? And Blue Sky is the safe space, or like, because I think too. I think Twitter is important, or let me say social media is important to developers, and because you kind of want to know what people are thinking, but it's starting to kind of get hard to know what people are thinking because it's just kind of engagement bait, and it's like, how do you know how these people are receiving your product, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of like a rock and a hard place for developers because on one hand, you absolutely want to listen to your community, and I commend developers who go out there and you know kind of try to sort through all the noise that there is on social media, on Reddit, on probably their Discord servers that they host.
I don't think I could
It's
take
got
it.
to
I
be.
would just like go insane. But you're
I
right.
know people who have worked in that space and they have struggled with mental health
Yeah.
because it is just like that constant onslaught of negativity. But like I do commend developers who make that extra leap forward and try to outreach their hand and meet the community where they're at. But there is a lot of noise, right? Like it's like how do you sort through all that? And it really comes down to actionable items, and that's something that I've always heard when I talk to developers and I say like, hey, like obviously people have very strong opinions about game X that you're about to release. Like, how do you look at that and like look at all this stuff that is being said on the internet and sort through the people that are just like raging against your game and actually find like the stuff that you can use to improve upon the game because people are bringing up valid points. And that's the trick, right? Is they have to get through and like actually drill down into people who are making these arguments and these suggestions, not because they're angry, but because they want the game to be better. And they're making these arguments not in bad faith, but in good faith. They're not drilling into ridiculous things. Like I remember, I've been doing this long enough that I remember when Spider-Man 1 was the center of controversy because the puddles were not the same as in the demo.
It
And
feels so like it's so outlandish that it's like as a developer I wouldn't be able to. I'm like it's so outlandish and right like it's just gotten worse. That's my thing. It's like how do you listen? It's so puddles. It's just crazy.
yeah, and I think that that's the mark of a good like community manager is they're able to figure out like what is the stuff that's
Yep.
actually worth surfacing to the developers who are going to make the call on, are we going to act on this? Are we going to implement this suggestion? Are we going to do this? Like I try to do that as much as I can for Game Informer because we don't have a dedicated community manager. I am on the Reddit every single day over at Game Informer's subreddit and just like fielding things, like figuring out like what stuff do I need to bring to the team, what makes sense to surface, and it's and that's a very small scale thing compared to what people like the community team over at Insomniac are dealing with right now. More than likely, I mean, I don't know. Are you seeing any other like big complaints that I didn't touch on for Wolverine? Because like
No,
I'm not as plugged into social media these
no, yeah,
days as I
yeah.
used to be.
I mean, there's a famous video. I'll put it on screen for people listening or watching. And it's like, do you know the segment? Have you watched the impressions? I assume every outlet got the same gameplay clips, but it's Wolverine like running through like things blowing up, and then he slides under, and there's just a famous video of a controller like some guy like pressing like forward, and it's like this is what they're making, and it's like yeah, like I don't know. It just doesn't. I mean, it just doesn't show the gameplay intricacies of like the fighting and stuff. So it
And
again,
they
it's
they had that
education.
same complaint. They had that same complaint for Spider-Man 1
Yep.
before it came out. They were like, "Oh, it's just all quick time events." And it's like, "No, that's just like very specific moments in the
Totally.
game." So, this is like such a cyclical thing for almost 10 years ago when we were gearing up for the release of the first Spider-Man game by Insomniac. People were upset because the E3 2017 demo or whatever it was either 2017 or 2018 E3 showed off the game, and it was like they showed off a quick time event in the middle of the demonstration, and people were so upset about that. They're like, this game's going to suck, it's just going to be quick time events. And then it came out and everybody loved it.
Awesome.
So I'm hoping that's the case with Wolverine.
Do you think, Brian? Do you think like take yourself back to 2014, or we'll go 2013 or 2012, whatever. I mean, do you think it was like this? I mean, really, like, do you think it? Like how? Yeah, like what do you think?
It was to an
Really?
extent, right? Like I think everything's been amped up to 11. I think everything has become kind of a point of division,
Mm-hmm.
I think, in some ways, whether in gaming or otherwise. And I think that that's just been amplified. But
Yeah.
there was a ton of negativity on
Mm-hmm.
social media back then as well. But people were still kind of, I think, preserving some of the fun. Like
Yeah.
social media was fun and a little bit more, I don't want to say innocent because there was also a lot of awfulness happening on social media back then.
Yeah. Yeah. Always,
Um,
right? Always, yeah.
and like I do think social media is a net negative
Mm-hmm.
for our
Yeah.
society at this point. And I I think it's gotten worse, but I do think that this is nothing new.
Yeah.
Like there's been controversy. I mean, again, I've been doing this long enough that I remember the social media controversy back in what was it, 2012, when Mass Effect 3 came out and the ending was unsatisfying for a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a lot of negativity directed towards BioWare, which at the time was one of the most critically acclaimed studios in the entire industry. And Mass Effect was one of the most critically acclaimed trilogies of
Mm-hmm.
the 21st century at that point. So it's never really been, I think it's like there's a more constant push towards negativity. I think a lot of people figured out, and a lot of people have actually not even figured out, but accepted that engagement through negativity is still engagement.
Totally.
Like, so if you rile people up and get them upset at something, it's still going to count as engagement. Whereas, and that's the main currency on social media, right? Like, especially on somewhere like X,
Yeah.
where you
We
are
don't
if you
call it that, Brian. It's Twit. I'm just kidding.
well, I mean, I was also resistant in calling it that for a long time,
No, I
but if
know
you
it
look at
is.
the way it operates, it is meaningfully different from how Twitter
I
operated.
know.
Like
Yeah.
the blue check mark alone, like as somebody who was previously verified through like the original means of like they would review every single account that applied and be like, yes, we'll give you a blue check mark. No, we won't. Now it's like you pay money for it. It's a monthly subscription, from what I understand, and you get money based on the engagement that your posts get. Like it's like almost like it's supposed to be like, oh, you did good work for us. Like that's the idea, but
Yeah.
people use that to just harvest negativity and harvest engagement.
Mm.
And people have found out that like it's so easy to rile people up on social media that they can kind of cheat the system. But what they're doing is they're putting negativity out into the world. And again, like I said about social media, those types of accounts are net negatives on this society.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, it's awful. I have a blue check mark just only because my girlfriend bullies me. I bully myself about it. Just because yeah, when I share videos and stuff of like interviews I do, like it unfortunately does boost that, and I want to share as much as I can, I guess. But yeah, it's embarrassing. I don't like to talk about it, but
But you're
um,
not out there like if you want to do that, that's fine. It's your
yeah,
money,
totally.
it's your decision. It's you're trying to boost your career. The thing that gets me is when people use that as an excuse just to, put negativity out into the world
Yeah.
and rile people up over, nothing
Mhm.
burgers.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. I hope. I don't know. I hope it gets better. I'm. I also think I'm like way too optimistic sometimes for this like industry. Just for anything in general. I'm like I'm too positive on it. And I ask
Hey,
people like, do you remember this? Because I just forget. Because I'm like just to not. I'm not like a toxic positivity, but I'm like just be rational, right? Like just be
mhm.
rational. So,
Yeah, and I mean, I think that I'm more optimistic than a lot of people are. Like, I try to, keep my. Obviously, it's difficult in recent times with like all the layoffs and
it's
studio
hard.
closures
Yeah.
and the decisions being made by PlayStation and Xbox. It's difficult to remain positive, and I've certainly fallen into a negativity pit on my podcast, which, my podcast is a very upbeat, family-friendly podcast about Nintendo, but I still talk about like when big news hits regarding like PlayStation and Xbox because I truly do believe that this industry is at its best when we have three strong platforms that are competing with one another. And I'm concerned about the direction that primarily Xbox but also PlayStation are taking with regards to these high level decisions like getting rid of physical media, like closing all these studios and really altering the entire face of what Xbox as we know it today is going to look like in a couple of years. And then of course that's nothing to say about like the prices and the larger broader corporate decisions. It's a dire time. So like I have fallen into that negativity as well, but I haven't lost that optimism and that love for this industry.
That you segmented me perfectly into into what I wanted to talk about. But I want to quote your article, wonderful article. If you're listening, please go check out this article by Brian. And it's the PS5 and the Xbox Series generation has been erased to the bottom. But I want to quote. I want to read the last paragraph and then I have some questions about it and kind of what you're talking about. In quote by Brian, I truly don't know what the future holds for the industry if we continue down the path of the last 5 years for the last 5 years. But I can tell you it won't be good. Though sustainability is a problem for the entire industry to solve, we need the platform holders to lead from the top rather than continuing to pull the rug out from under their partners in the process of dismantling the hobby that we all love. Um, you talk a lot about the physical games, which is funny because this was made before PlayStation. I thought that was really funny in retrospect. You wrote about this before PlayStation, of course, announced their dismantling of physical products in 2028. So yeah, I want to ask you a little bit about. I know everybody's tired of talking about it, but I think it's kind of relevant to what we're talking about. But I want to change it a little bit. Where do you think the future is going with this digital ownership? Well, we don't know what Xbox is going to do. We kind, it's rumored that they're going to be doing the disc to digital, which I'm pro in some ways not. Do you think that this future needs to be focused on digital ownership and license instead of license? You own your products. And what do you want out of it, Brian? Yeah, I'll set you up for there.
It's interesting because I actually wrote this right after
Oh,
PlayStation had
was it?
had
Okay, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
So I mentioned it in like midway through the article about like how like PlayStation just announced the all digital future, and I I admit in that passage that like I haven't bought like a physical game in many years, but I don't want an all digital future. Even though personally I buy digital games because it's just so much more convenient for me.
Hmm.
The fact that we aren't going to have physical games anymore for, at least PlayStation, potentially Xbox, is a net negative there because it's like there's no competition then, right? Like then the only way you can get a PlayStation 5 game or PlayStation 6 game, probably in that case, is going to be through PlayStation itself. And that is going to drive prices up because right now, like, if I want to buy Wolverine and the game's been out for 3 months, I could go buy it on sale at Target. I could go to GameStop and buy it used, hopefully at a decent discount, or I could go on the PlayStation Store.
Hmm.
If PlayStation makes it so you no longer have that physical option, they can just keep the price of whatever they want. And that is going to ultimately hurt us. And we've seen that like these companies aren't afraid to raise prices. So in terms of like what we might get going forward, it would likely be we have no say over what happens to our games, right? Like I was actually, like I said, I just bought a PS5 Pro and I was going in and I was downloading games. I was re-downloading like the games that I own quote unquote digitally
Yeah.
onto my PS5 Pro. And there were certain games from like, 10 years ago that just have like the big, like they're grayed out and they have like a circle with a cross through it, and it's like this game just is no longer available to download. And some of them are like live service games that just aren't operational anymore. Like I don't know if you remember Paragon,
Dude,
which
it's
was
so funny. As soon as you said that, I have that logo as I played a lot of Paragon, and yeah, I always see
Mhm.
that logo on my PlayStation. Yeah.
And it's like, so for people who aren't aware, it was like a MOBA that Epic Games made right before it struck gold with Fortnite. And it didn't take off, and they ultimately discontinued it, and
I
then
love that game.
transitioned all
It was
those
so good.
resources into Fortnite. It was
Yeah,
it was a cool
it was
idea.
very fun. I liked it a lot.
So like stuff like that. Like obviously it's difficult because that's a live service game that's just not supported anymore. It doesn't have the servers live anymore. So why would you want to re-download it?
Right.
Well, there's game preservation reasons why you'd want to re-download it, but it's just the fact that I have this thing, this digital license to play this game and I can't re-download it. And it's like that that's frustrating, and it's an ill omen for the future if we lose the ability to actually purchase a physical game and you can hold it in your hand. You're like, you can't take this away, this is mine, I can put it in my system whenever I want, unless the approach to how digital stuff works right now changes to, again, as you said, transfer from being a license to play this game to being you own this game. Like I got an analog 3D. I don't know if you know what that
Yeah,
is.
super
It's
nice. Yeah.
it's like an N64, like a modern N64 made by the great folks over at Analog. And it's crazy that I can just put my copy of GoldenEye 007 in that and play it, and it's like, yeah, it just works because I own this game. I've owned it for,
I really
30
really
years.
respect what they're doing over there. I think it's very important. Especially I think that, sorry to go off on this tangent, but I
No,
do
go for it.
think sometimes old consoles, it's hard. I talk about this a lot of like, I'm very anti-piracy, but sometimes I'm very like, get an emulator to play an N64 because the access is very hard. But I think companies like that, they're a little expensive, but as they should be. They're very boutique. But yeah, I really respect what they're doing over there. I think it's cool, the ease of access to bring these wonderful games, and just ease of access to play games being preserved onto a modern console. It's very cool.
The most powerful response to the notion that like you don't own these games if you buy them on the digital storefronts is that thing that I've seen going around social media where if ownership, or if what is it, if purchasing doesn't equal ownership, then emulation doesn't equal theft or something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, okay, yeah. I like that line, even though I'm not
Yeah.
somebody who really does emulation myself.
Yeah.
Like, and I haven't really like, I understand emulation from the perspective of one that, but because
Absolutely.
then like they can't revoke your license.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
two, like from a game preservation perspective, like I know
It's very
people who
important.
are in that space and they are gung ho on emulation because that is a way that you can rip a ROM and then
Yeah.
you have it, right? Like there's
Yeah.
no taking it away. And it's like, take like a game like that I've always wanted to play. I never owned it. And we talked about how I'm a big Sonic fan. It's like, I can't play the Sonic Advance games anywhere
Mm.
unless I go seek out a physical copy on from Game Boy Advance,
Are
which I
those
don't, I
the?
mean,
It's the Sonic games on Game Boy Advance.
yeah, there's,
Okay, okay.
there's,
I'm not familiar with Sonic Advance. Okay, cool.
yeah. And like, apparently they're very good. I've never played them because I never had them on or on Game Boy Advance. But it's like, why are those not in a collection somewhere released currently?
You're
So
gonna
in
have to get
that
an
case,
analog pocket to play
well,
them.
in that case, it's like almost like, okay, I understand if somebody wants to emulate that
Totally.
because
Yeah.
it's like there's no good way to buy that game. And that's how I feel about a lot of these games that are just like kind of like hidden away and not brought out. But like overall, I think that, the big change that will need to happen if we are in fact heading like setting our course as an industry towards an all digital future is we need to change our mind about what these licenses
Yeah.
mean, and they should not be revocable. Like they should not be blocking you from re-downloading things. And if like you bought a game, you should be able to download and play that game, barring any like, okay, well, the servers are now offline permanently. Like I get that, but like we've seen games on PC persist for years after the official servers have been shut down because somebody just sets up a server and allows people to join their sessions. And like we saw right before PlayStation announced that they were going all digital in 2028, we saw them revoke like hundreds of movie licenses from people who bought things. I think
Very
it was
big
like
movies
Terminator
as well.
2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Terminator 2 is one of the biggest ones. Yeah.
One
I
of the greatest movies of all time.
It
And
is.
they like you can't if you bought it through PlayStation because they're like agreement with what is it, Fox, I guess, or Universal or whoever. I think Fox owns
Well, it's
Terminator. I
with
don't
like
know.
Disney and Fox now is like of course the merger, and yeah, I'm sure there's Disney is never fun to work with, so
Yeah, so there's like, there's licensing issues with that, but it's like why I get it. Maybe you're not able to sell that anymore, but it shouldn't be removed from somebody's account. And if it is, they should 100% be refunded.
yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, what's so funny that you brought up Paragon, Brian, is that when they took Paragon off, I got refunded that $20 I bought that starter thing for. You know what? I mean,
Mm,
that game was up for a year and 2 years. So it was a good amount of time. I got refunded. Epic did that for everybody. So it's funny you say that, but yeah, again, let's go back to me calling myself optimistic. It's like to me, there's no future where they're just gonna get away with this, right? Like, again, I'm not a politician. I don't know how any of these things work. I just look at the industry, but to me, I'm like, there's no way they get away with. Like, they're gonna have to figure something out, or they're gonna crash and burn. I don't want them to. I don't want anyone to, but I can't really fathom it because it's also interesting to me that Steam is kind of the same way, but the
hmm
ecosystem feels safe. Like I feel safe on my PC. Like I don't feel like my games are going to disappear. Like I own the original San Andreas, and if you know, like San Andreas is not anywhere. They're through the Rockstar launcher. If you have
Yeah, you have to buy
the
the
definitive
GTA
edition,
trilogy. Yeah.
yeah, and those are available there. But I bought the original San Andreas on Steam. They took it off, but I still have it. Right? Like I have Deadpool on PC. Funny enough, the Deadpool game by High Moon, and I still have
Yeah.
that. So yeah, like these places feel safe, even though technically that still is a license. These places feel safe.
And
Like
they
so,
can revoke it. They have the
right?
capability to revoke those licenses. I've
Absolutely.
because I play like preview builds all the time. Like a developer will send me a Steam code ahead of time. Like I just got that with Star Wars Zero Company, and it's like,
Nice.
here's a code, redeem it, enter this beta branch, and then you'll be able to play the build that we want you to play for this preview thing. And then I got a message right after embargo lifted saying your access to this game has been revoked and it was no longer in my library. And it's like they have that capability. I don't think you see it happen very frequently. And I'm glad that you don't see it happen very frequently. But and I hate slippery slope arguments, but it is not hard to imagine a world where like a game comes out and it's critically panned and the developer decides like, oh well, we should maybe do more work on this. Let's just revoke everybody's license and then relaunch it in a couple of years when it's ready or whatever. I mean, we more or less saw that with Final Fantasy 14, and obviously that
We
was
did, yeah.
like a extraordinary circumstance, and it ended up being an overall good development
Yep.
because Final Fantasy 14 is fantastic now, from what I understand. I'm not an MMO guy, but like everybody I talk to is like, yeah, it's like the best MMO. And so like Naoki Yoshida did a fantastic job with that, and I think it was warranted because that original Final Fantasy 14 just was a disaster. But like I don't know if it's like we saw it with like live service shooters like High Guard and Concord, where it's like, okay, well this game is out now and now it's canceled and it's you can't even play it
Yeah,
anymore.
I
And
feel I feel awful for people over at High Guard. I think there were valid criticisms. I think that was
Mhm.
like one of the most interesting level of circumstances that happened with Jeff, and like the whole thing was just a cluster. And I don't even know if you want that to be around, but I do think the Concord thing is interesting because I don't know. I kind of like you bought it. To be fair, they refunded everybody. And again, there's a whole conversation to have with how Sony has handled, live service. But I kind of feel like if you bought it, you should keep it. But they refunded everybody. So it's, yeah. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's very interesting circumstances there with live service games and preservation because, I mean, I don't know. Should live service games be preserved? I kind of think so. But at the same time, like it's kind of hard to if you don't have servers up. Um,
Yeah.
but it's like how do you put servers on to a console? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know
I don't know how
either.
to do that. But it is an interesting conversation to have about that, Brian. I don't know how that works at all. But yeah, I just can't. They're gonna have to figure it out. Like Sony and I think Microsoft got lucky. I mean, I think both of these companies keep getting lucky over each other. I mean, more likely, Sony has gotten way more lucky than Microsoft, but Microsoft is in an interesting place right now. Like they need to respond. I thought that they would have already responded. I am so shocked that they haven't. As you know, I have both consoles behind me, and I like to just have access to everything that I can.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to figure it out. I just can't see a future. I wish the Steam machine would have done better because I think that is the future. I mean, we already know that Xbox might have this PC hybrid, but I think there might be things changing a little bit with game ownership. And I wish that they would just talk about it. I wish Sony would talk about it, but we'll see with the
Yeah.
PS6.
It needs to be addressed. Like if you want people to be on board with the all digital future, you need to, come out and make definitive statements about what it means to own a game digitally and what its approach will be to the storefront. Because like is this game going to be $70, $80, whatever their base price is for, 2 years, and then we finally get a discount 2 years down the road? And it's like, I mean, Nintendo's been doing that for for years,
Yeah,
where they just don't discount their like.
yeah,
If you get Breath of the Wild for like $40, that's a steep discount, and it's like
yeah.
that game's almost 10 years old at this point. And but like they do that intentionally because they want to preserve the value of their titles. PlayStation and Xbox have not traditionally done that, and to have them start now to coincide with the fact that these games are going to be only digitally available, it would be like, oh well, that's why, because there's no risk that somebody's going to just go to a store that's having a clearance sale and buying it for $20 instead of $80.
Yeah. It'll be fascinating to watch, and I think a response is very needed. And I'm very scared that Sony at least will not respond. I think that they're going to keep pushing forward. And we
Well,
will
they
see.
already said we've heard your
Right.
criticisms and we're still going to keep going, and it's
Yeah.
like, cool, thanks
And
so
that
much.
that
it's
was from their
it's almost
financial
like,
call, I believe. Yeah.
I mean, we just saw the guy from Twitch making news because they did like the AI training on streams on Twitch. I
Yeah.
don't know if you
Okay.
saw
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. 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 I heard about that. Yeah.
And he was on a stream and the community was doing like Q&A, and they asked like, well, why do we have to opt out? Why isn't it just off by default and you have to opt in? And he said he said the quiet part out loud of, if we made you opt in, nobody would opt in. And it's like, yeah, because nobody wants this. Like, absolutely nobody would opt in
Yeah.
because nobody would want to do it. Like, what give us a benefit if you're going to do it? It's just really frustrating that like these companies keep making things worse by design. And like I have a smart TV behind me,
Mhm.
and I have intentionally not connected it to the internet
Mm,
because I don't want the constant worsening of the hardware by way of software updates. And I finally connected it very reluctantly last night because I was so fed up with the home screen and like the way that it's like laid out. I'm like, there has to
yeah.
be an update that makes this better. And sure enough, supposedly I was going to update overnight last night. So hopefully I log on and it's
Yeah.
all great. But I've heard stories of like, I think Vizio or LG, one of these companies was it added like an unskippable pop-up ad when you first turn it on. It's like
Oh, bro.
nobody wants that.
That's
It's just
cyberpunk in real life. Yeah.
it's really like how much can we, and I mentioned this in my article that you referenced, where it's like it's more about how much can we frustrate our customers without driving them into the arms of our direct competitors. And I feel like Xbox and PlayStation have adopted that mentality. And somebody on my podcast, I did a Q&A episode, and somebody wrote in, it's like, how does Nintendo capitalize on this? And my best answer that I could come up with was just stay the course. Just keep doing what you're doing, putting out great games. Don't annoy your customers by design like PlayStation and Xbox
Yeah.
seem to be doing, or don't run your business into the ground the way Xbox has. And Nintendo will come out smelling like roses
Yeah. I
because
agree.
they're not doing these anti-consumer moves.
Hmm. Yeah, I think just to end the conversation, I know we're almost out of time, but I think what Nintendo does right for me anyway is that they talk as much as they need to. Like I like when I watch
Mm,
a direct, and we'll see people talk. Like we'll see Miyamoto, or like we'll see somebody talk about how things are, and then they're quiet. I think, and again, it's what works for Sony, and that's why I'm kind of pro Asha at this point. Honestly, I kind of like how much she talks. I like the clairvoyancy. I know some people are kind of against it, but I love that. I love when y- what's his name? Oh yeah, it's Sony, and like he was like part of the indie. What's its not Yoshida, but I don't know. It'll come to me. But I just liked how much they talked, and I think that's kind of what we've lost. It's starting to feel very corporatey, and nobody's talking. And I think mascots need to come back. I love that. But well, Brian,
well,
thank you
I
so.
mean,
Oh, sorry. Go.
Xbox tried to bring its mascot to PlayStation, and now it seems like
They
they're
haven't. I
dialing that
know.
all back.
Yeah, I know.
And it's I think another big thing, and I'll leave it at
Oh
this,
yeah,
is
of course.
like the development timelines have become too much, right? Like
Yeah.
we see these games just taking forever now, and that means that so much more importance is placed on each and every release. And if, it used to be like, all right, we'll put out like 3 games this generation. And now it's like, we'll put out maybe 1 game this generation if we're lucky, like as a
Yeah.
studio. And when that is how long it takes for you to make a game, and obviously that makes the budget so much higher because you're paying staff throughout all that, you're paying for more expensive tools. If that game comes out and it kind of bombs, like your studio might be in jeopardy no matter how storied its history is.
Hmm.
Whereas if you had 3 or 4 games coming out in a generation and you could be like, oh, okay, well, game 2 of 4 didn't sell well or was critically panned. You have game 3 to look forward to and game 4. And it's like, okay, we don't have to wait 8 or 9 years for the next Naughty Dog joint or whatever. It's there was a much faster turnaround. I think there needs to be something to solve for on that front. And I know that a lot of people are pointing towards AI. I don't think that's the answer
Yeah.
because like I think AI could be a tool, but it should not be like the driving force in development because human creativity is something that sets art apart from every other facet of our lives, which are so automated and so soulless at times, where it's like if you've ever worked in a corporate environment, you understand that feeling. And that's why art, whether it's a movie, whether it's a TV show, whether it's a video game or music, anything like that, the human element really hits because so much of life around us just doesn't have that or it's lacking in
No.
that.
And that's what gives me life. I think it's what gives you life. It's what gives a lot of people purpose. But Brian, there's so much I could respond to that, but we are out of time. Thank you so much for hopping on. Where can people find you? Where can they read your stuff at?
Yeah, sure. So GameInformer.com is the place to read all my stuff. We also you can subscribe to our print magazine. Speaking of
Oh,
physical
let's
media,
go.
can't revoke that license. If you have a copy of Game Informer magazine, nobody's going to come take it from you. So GameInformer.com/subscribe. Big news on that front because we are rolling out to new countries. Keep
Ooh.
your eyes open for an announcement. If I don't know if it's going to be out by the time this episode hits, but like Canada, UK, Germany, maybe, try GameInformer.com/subscribe if you're looking for a physical video game magazine. A few other countries in the near future as well. And obviously, across the entire United States, you can also subscribe to that. But then also my podcast, the All Things Nintendo podcast. It's a new episode every Friday. It is a Patreon supported podcast, but you can listen for free. And, if you like it, then come join the crew over on Patreon.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much, Brian. Lots of love and good luck to you with everything. But thank you so much. Appreciate it, dude.
Thanks for having me, Dayton.